Q&A. We have a Q&A. What would you call it, David? Which is sort of a ritual here with our openings, which we enjoy doing with our collectors. Question and answers with the artist. But tonight that's going to be emceed not by me but by Kerry O'Brien. Why wouldn't you? So I'm going to ask Kerry to come up and officially open the show and hopefully have a lovely little informal chat with Brendon, and they've got some great stories to tell, mostly truthful. So, so it's wonderful. Thank you, Kerry. Thanks, man. Kerry O'Brien.
Actually, the truthful ones you won't hear tonight.
No.
The first thing I've got to say, Brendon, is that you've gone to enormous trouble to disguise the fact that you can't draw a straight line.
Busted.
Gallery openings are not a natural fit for me, but Brendon, for the 10 years I've known him, has gone to great lengths to take me out of my comfort zone. The very first time we made contact, Brendon asked me if I would sit for the Archibald, and we had mutual friends, and I checked him out and was so taken by the quality and the depth and the range of his work, all those wonderful, not just were they iconic Australian landscapes like the Kimberley and Kakadu, the south of Western Australia and so on, but the particularly unique way that Brendon saw them, and also his portrait work that I was flattered enough to say yes. But then Brendon explained his idea for the portrait, which involved an orange jumpsuit, handcuffs, and a gag. And this was, of course, a la Guantanamo Bay, and Brendon's not so subtle implication or message was that he felt I was being gagged by the government of the day, or that perhaps that they wanted to. Now, as much as I was tempted to say yes, just to be able to see the expressions on the faces of some of the ABC senior management, and to hear the mock outrage of one or two politicians, sanity prevailed and I said no. But he's been doing it ever since, pushing me out of my comfort zone. Nonetheless, here I am tonight. Brendon, you have absolutely excelled yourself, mate. I haven't seen everything you've ever done. I've seen a lot of it. It's like things have coalesced here somehow. Things have come together with what you've done in a very special way. There are a lot of words that come to mind if you're describing this man.
Language.
Most of them. some of them are not fit for this audience. But words like daring and courage and vivid, compelling, just a very singular way of seeing things, and the boldness. There was one painting you did, and there was a wonderful kind of coming together of journeys where Brendon and Julia had talked about going to New York for quite a while before they actually got there, and you'd had an exhibition over there, and you had an excitement and a clear idea, I think, of what you wanted. But it took a while to get there. But when they did get there, it just so happened that I was passing through on my way to Washington to interview a guy named Barack Obama, and that was secondary because I had the opportunity to stop off in Brooklyn with these guys and experience a meal at a restaurant that they'd discovered that I'd never heard of before. And it's an interesting concept. It was called brick chicken, and it actually involved squashing the chicken with bricks. But it was everything that...
It was already dead.
I'm sorry you told me that. I thought it was actually alive. But every step of the way to the restaurant was like living through Brendon's eyes what Brooklyn was and what that New York, that wonderful Manhattan landscape was to him. But I remember one painting in particular, Brendon, which looked fine to me, it was compelling, it was arresting, it was this New York landscape, and then you picked up a spray can as you were talking about how interesting you were finding graffiti and the kind of the drive behind graffiti as you took that spray can and sprayed that painting. What happened to it? Tell me the story of that painting.
Have we moved into question and answer already? Is that what's...
Oh, this was supposed to be a seamless
Oh, I see.
segue.
That particular piece, as I think I said to you at the time, was one of the most invigorating, exciting pieces I did because of that move. And I sort of understood, I know this is a cheap shot, but the graffiti artists, stealing into the night, making a mark that they feel compelled to do. In this case, it was more about the understanding of the movement of street art from traditional work to street art, and it's a hard step for all of us to take in varying degrees. There's the dilemma between street art and graffiti and tagging. There's grey lines everywhere there. But in painting over a very large traditional painting with a can that I'm not very good with, this is my first attempt at graffiti, if you like, I found inspirational because I knew it was going to upset a lot of people, and it certainly did.
It was breaking a barrier. Was that partly what it was about?
Absolutely, and I had much more response from that piece than I've had from any other painting I've ever done since or before. Most of it was negative, which was okay, I was expecting that. But as it happened, that piece went on show in Perth at Linton and Kay last year and was the first piece to sell. So some people, I think, well, we're all guilty of getting into a comfort zone and being in a particular genre we feel good in, and if someone breaks the mould, it's tough, and it takes us a while to get there.
But the person breaking the mould, that's the real toughness. I mean,
okay.
Not so much toughness as courage. I want to know what it's like even the first time you did it with a painting that you really liked as an original landscape painting, and then you put the next layer over it. I mean,
well, getting back to the spray can piece, this idea of knowing that was going to happen eventually, a bit like this, I guess, to simplify the piece and take it away from a traditional painting. That process of painting that traditional piece you're talking about took quite a while. It was 4 or 5 weeks of intensive work, and the longer I spent on it, the more compelled I was to destroy it, if you like.
Yeah.
Because to do a cheap shot or a half-assed painting underneath and then destroy it really, cheapened the process. You know where I'm going with that?
Yes, I do.
It's the work in traditional painting, which I still enjoy doing, and I appreciate those that do impressionistic works like this. I guess there's a touch of Dadaism, maximum work for, in my case, maximum result, but as far as people viewing were concerned, how can you do that? How can you destroy your own work?
Yeah.
But it was my work, I can destroy it.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was destroyed, but that was the impression a lot of people had.
I'm going to throw it open to questions after this one. Your journey to abstract has been a fairly long one, hasn't it?
I'm still struggling to get there.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well,
No, not as I can see it.
Well, as it happens, most of the works here, even these in the next room up, might appear initially to be abstract paintings, but they're totally figurative. That's reality, and well, my version of it. And
What were you on?
Yeah, I was on the front seat of Steve Anderson.
That's Kent Street, right?
That is Kent Street, yeah. And I'm a traditionalist, I guess, at heart, and I went through the graphics training and find it very, very hard to paint abstract for abstract sense. I'd love to be able to, because pure abstract really has no reference, when we come down to it. But I can't get there. I need to have some sort of reference underneath and follow a path, and I step out on this path and I get scared and I come back, And they won't
But
like
then you go out
I
again.
won't like this, But I love abstraction, and really what's happened here, particularly up there, is nature's done the abstraction for me, or the environment has done that, and I'm just trying to grab it in my own way. So it's easier for me that way.
Questions?
Can I?
Yeah. Sorry, just here first.
Have you experimented with the intensity of the milk overpainting motif, the appropriate words?
Milk over
Or
paint.
what, you know,
Oh,
the sponge?
The screen.
The
oh,
sponge.
okay, the glaze, yeah.
Yes,
Have I experimented with it?
with the intensity of that.
I have. You'll notice there's a piece just across here that's encaustic, so there's wax involved in that as well, which I really enjoy working with. And I think, as Trevor said earlier, in that process, I find the happy accidents are really important. You know, it's a trial and error thing, and the beautiful thing about wet, misty windows and marks on them, you have scope for that. It doesn't look wrong if you put a scratch where it shouldn't be or you didn't intend. And so yes, I have, and it starts from the studies at the top with the works on paper, giving me an idea of how I'm going to translate this to a larger canvas. But yeah, I've tried a few different things, and I'll probably use a bit more wax in the future as well, beeswax, and because I can heat it and push it around. Good fun. Yeah.
Was there a question here?
What compels you to destroy something?
Well, that was just perhaps the wrong terminology. To me, it enhanced the painting, but for a lot of people, I destroyed it. My mother-in-law had to go and lie down. No, I'm not kidding. She did. You know, she felt sick for weeks over this, and I thought,
Yes!
You mean you were trying to make her sick, or it was just the right reaction?
I shouldn't video that one.
That was the graffiti paint.
and she really was really upset. It was fabulous.
Enhances the ability.
This is going straight back.
Sorry, North. No, I, in my opinion, it enhanced the painting. The piece underneath might be, in some people's eyes, a competent traditional piece, but there was nothing original about it, you know, as far as an art movement is concerned. Not that there was much about the can over it, but it was just a play. It was a comment on art movements rather than the piece itself.
And you've added some colour into some parts of it, the glaze.
Yes, not the one we're talking about, the spray can. No, that was just a straight traditional impressionistic
But the
painting.
glaze you have.
Yes, I do colour the glazes. You'll find if you look at different paintings, some have a
Different parts, different.
there's blues and greens
Yes,
and yellows
yes,
in
and
there.
greys and-
Yeah.
yes.
You know, through observing these images through windows, different sections of the glass pick up, because they are minor crystals, aren't they? Little mini crystals that are picking up colours around them. So you'll have a yellow light down in the bottom corner that may not even be in the frame, but the crystals will be picking it up.
So the light changes quickly. Do you photograph and stay with the photo, or are you that fast?
No, not that fast.
Right.
A lot of these pieces, Sydney Harbour is a
Yes.
good example. When I came over to do this piece, there was no wet window, so a lot of the pieces I've imposed a wet window just to give another layer and another interest, and if you like, a sense of abstraction, you know, tentative sense of abstraction.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the pieces weren't originally seen through wet windows. I would take photographs and do drawings and
But
take
the ones from the boat are, aren't they?
some of them again, and some of them are not. The studies, for example, on paper up here, were viewed from the deck in beautiful weather. You know. But I had seen on previous trips, looking through the window, how this works, and so I could choose a landscape and interpret it this way.
And so the glaze comes like a tool over it from your imagination later on.
Yes, sir, that's right. And it's a great compositional tool because you can mark it wherever you like.
Brendon, you've obviously got amazing tweeting abilities, because you timed it today whereby thousands of young people marched across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, that's really
It's made global news, so Brooklyn's everywhere on the web.
I've stopped reading the papers.
Well, they charge. Can you foresee a time when you might want to portray some sort of human reaction matched against these significant landmarks, particularly with your political advisor to hand, but could you see yourself working behind the glass, as it were, and giving a political perspective,
Well, yes.
given the way things are moving?
In the presence of Kerry, with the greatest of respect, I'm not really.
John Howard used to say that.
Well, you know, it's interesting. When Kerry said to me today, "Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" I said, "Absolutely not. I saw what you did to John Howard."
He didn't think so.
And again, talking about political paintings, when I approached Kerry, and I have to give you your credit here, and wanted to do the portrait in an orange jumpsuit and the handcuffs, we met for the first time at lunch, and I sat down and he said, "So what are you thinking? What are you thinking of painting?" I said, "I've got a couple of ideas I want to run past you." And he said to me immediately, "No, you're not going to do an orange jumpsuit." And I had the jumpsuit in a bag. He hadn't seen. This is absolutely true because Hicks was very current. I mean, this was what was going on, and so my flawed attempts to be political have come to nothing at this point.
But rather than a political statement, it was more a fetish of yours, wasn't it?
Kerry,
I didn't hear about the fetish until later.
Saturday night for Kerry.
But maybe this is not a political statement; it's more an emotional statement. But the Twin Towers piece in the window, could be construed.
It just seems that young folk, I mean, I'm not trying to be political, but young folk at the moment are protesting at significant landmarks.
Yes, that's
Right.
right.
St Paul's or the Brooklyn Bridge. So
No, I take your point.
it's going to be interesting the way that develops.
I take your point, and I wish I were deeper.
Actually, I've followed Brendon's career since the age of 8.
Since he was 8.
Yeah,
That would make
it
you
coincided with both of us, so it was actually quite good. But in actual, just thinking about as far as making a statement is concerned, you did a painting called Bloody Tourists, which was this absolutely incredible scene in the Kimberleys, I think it was. And these little people in this absolutely magnificent, pristine environment, and these little tiny people that were really mucking up the entire environment, by being there, whether they were taking rocks for souvenirs or diving in the pools or whatever. There's a bit of a statement there, I think, in that, but it was really subtle. And,
Well, that resulted from, I found that no matter where I went, I'd be out in the middle of the desert, in southern Kakadu or somewhere, and you think, "Oh, isn't this brilliant?" And then you'd hear, I'm not going to say what I said out there, but it didn't matter where you went, they'd come walking by in a bunch. I used to call them coach loads. There's inevitably 25 of them.
And then you discovered it was your wife.
Yes.
How were you received in New York?
You mean with regard to the exhibition?
Yeah.
How many times were you mugged?
well, as you know, New York's probably safer than, I wouldn't say Sydney, but Perth. Oh, sorry, I wouldn't say Perth. Received. It was an exciting event. It was at the Museum of Natural History, and it was an event to raise funds for Australian conservation, part of Australia Week in New York. And the event, I can't claim all of the credit for this, but it raised over $1 million for the environment here, which was just, for me, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And that was your music as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was called Listening to Paintings Australia, and it was a series of 10 really large paintings, 3 metres by 2 metres approximately. Sorry, I should say that the other way around, if you're correct, 2 metres by 3 metres. And 10 pieces of music, one for each piece, and that was performed at this event. The music was performed live with a video documentary behind the performance. It was lots of fun and lots of stress. But yeah, it was end result was terrific for me anyway.
Maybe one more question if we haven't. If we haven't. Yep.
Where did the Twin Towers painting end up?
I don't know the owner's name, but
A collector in Perth.
a collector in Perth bought it.
There was a lady in Perth who had lost her husband in the Twin Towers, and when it was first exhibited, she really was keen to buy the painting, but she couldn't bring herself to hanging it in the house after a while, so it subsequently sold to another collector.
How about your music? Your beautiful music I've heard on the background in the DVD.
Okay, well,
That's beautiful. Is there a way to access it?
yes. The piece I've written for this show, I don't know if it's been playing just recently, but maybe we'll play it in a little while.
It was playing earlier.
It runs for about 7.5 minutes, so I wouldn't suspect you to stand around and listen to this, but it's based on the melody line that the trains on the subway make in New York. The wheels on the line, there's a common, I'll whistle for you, it goes. It goes for a while, and as it disappears into the distance, you hear it go up in whole tones. and then disappears. And this I heard in just about every subway I was in, including Marcy Station, which is the painting up the top.
It was tinnitus. I must say there was one. Was it the video that you put together for last year's exhibition, or was it on the YouTube before that? But where you used that wonderful series of sound cuts to go with the stations and the trains and
Yes.
magic.
Well, that's been used in this piece as well, again from Marcy Station.
Right.
But the rhythm track at the end of the music is made up of edited cuts of the very, very noisy underground subway, including cars and trucks.
It's full of rhythm.
Yeah, and just cut and put into rhythm. Yeah. So the piece of music you'll hear is all based on the sounds that come from the subway. It starts off very lightly, trying to reflect the Hawkesbury River, but there are little elements every now and then, reminders of Brooklyn and New York, and then in the end it becomes very rowdy. So I apologise if it annoys you at the end, but it's really cranky stuff.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank
But
you.
congratulations, mate.
Yeah.
As far as
Thank
I'm
you, Kerry.
concerned, it's open.
Well done. Thank you, Kerry.